All right, it is now 5:30. I will call the select board meeting to order on December 5th. If you can please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So just to let everyone know, there is another gentleman here taping tonight. So Mr. Knightley will also be taping today's meeting. And we will, I'm sorry?
Yakir.
Yakir, thank you. And we will try and speak loudly for you because we do not have the speaker system right now. So to start off this meeting, before we get into our 5:31 appointment, I just want to let everyone know that tonight is going to be a conversation between the select board and the applicant. We will not be taking any citizen participation, okay? So it is 5:31, so we will start our continued public hearing Thursday, December 5th at 2024 at 10 West State Street, Granby, Mass. To consider a gravel permit application by LJ Development, LLC. Applicant and owner, James and Kathy A. Slate, ET.AL, 44 Mercier Drive, Belchertown, Mass. To remove earth materials from property located on Tromke Avenue as per the zoning bylaws, Section 5, Special Use Regulations and Performance Standards, 5.8, earth removal of the town of Granby. So yes, you can come up, or is the lawyer here, or Neil? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Neil Jackson, representing LJ Development. I think our attorneys contacted the select board for an extension until April, so we can investigate some alternate access to the You know, a lot of the opposition is for using Tromke Ave and Bachelor, which we haven't abandoned that idea, but we're looking to see if there's a more amicable solution. So obviously we have to work with flooding property owners to get access.
All right. Were any of the studies started?
Some of them have started yet, but again, a lot of the studies that revolve around using Tromke and Bachelor. So if we abandon that,
I think the particular matter in the air, that study was not just for access through that, so that will still be done.
Yeah.
I know the other one was the traffic study, which was based off coming off of Tromke Ave and which route you guys were going to take for the traffic analysis. And then the title search, we never received it, did we, Chris? Do you guys have the?
I don't have, but I think it has been completed.
And then I'm not sure if you can answer this, Neil, but the hydraulic study.
We haven't done that.
Okay. Hydrologic study, sorry. You guys have any questions?
I guess my question would be, is there a way that we can have a meeting before that? And my concern is that this goes to, we haven't set a date yet, one in April. But my concern is come May, the board may or may not be made up with a different board member. We're already in a since this has started, we've already had one change in a board member. So my concern is that this information keeps on going forward. With that time frame, I want to make sure the board has enough time to review the application after the close of
We
it.
could put together a different access by then, absolutely.
That's finally, I want to, and I'm not sure how that would affect, from my standpoint, where the outcome would be if we may or may not change another board member that's been part of it since the beginning. So I guess for me, that's something I'd have to, ask our council on that to see where we'd be with that. That's just a concern that I would have. The applicant is requesting to continue this until April, until they have some additional information in regards to possible different access routes into the gravel pit. But there's also some other information that's due. My concern is that in May, we have a town election for select board. And, it's unsure whether or not we'll have the same board after that election or not. We obviously can't say for certain one way or another. So my concern is that with the board having enough time, depending on when this is in April, until the first or second Monday in May, third Monday in May, does that affect the board's time frame? Because we're to have a 90-day window after the close of the public hearing. And my concern is that if a decision is not made prior to the election and we have a different board member, where does that put us? Because one of the board members was part of the whole hearing from the beginning.
Right. So I don't have a particular concern with the 90-day deadline, but that's not to say that your point isn't a good one. It is. And this happens from time to time with applications that take a while to work their way through a special permit granting authority, where an applicant submits an application. It can be in January, February, and it takes 6 or 7 or 8 months for that application to be fully heard and vetted. Meanwhile, in the middle of that process, there's an election, and there could be a changeover of 1, sometimes 2. I've had a case where there's a changeover of 4 of 5 board members. And so in those circumstances, the members who were not on the board at the time of the opening of the public hearing aren't qualified to vote on the application. And so what happens from the applicant's perspective is at some point in that process, the applicant loses the requisite number of members to even qualify for the permit. If it's a special permit, it requires a supermajority vote, and if it's a 3-member board, it requires a unanimous vote. And so even on a 3-member board, if a single member is lost, the applicant can't possibly qualify for the permit. So what has to be done? It's a process that we casually refer to as reconstituting the board. And effectively what it means is, if midway through a review process, midway through a public hearing process, the membership of the board changes due to an election, the applicant has to effectively start afresh and renotice the public hearing the way that it did for the initial session of the public hearing, with published notice and notice by mail to all parties in interest, abutters to abutters within 300 feet of the property, and then effectively start the process afresh. Now, maybe the applicant can show up and at that first meeting kind of recap what was done previously over the course of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meetings, so that it really isn't a one-for-one reenactment of what occurred previously. But the statutory process does need to be followed. That happens with more frequency than you might think, but it's an added inconvenience for the board. It's an added inconvenience for the applicant, and certainly it's additional cost for the applicant to have to pay to publish notice twice in the newspaper and to mail notice to what could be a number of abutters.
Okay. Because we've already had one board member since this special permit application has started. We have one new board member since that time frame as well already. I want to make sure the applicant that they're aware of what may come in the future just based on that.
So what I don't know is I don't know whether, because I'm not your usual town council, whether Granby has adopted the statutory provision that allows, what would typically be referred to as the exception to the Mullins rule, that allows the board member to miss one meeting and then rehabilitate the member herself by reviewing the transcript and certifying in the record that they've done so. Have you adopted that statute? Do you know?
We have, but my concern is that you're talking over a year of, well, several meetings within over a year period of time. And I mean, there's been a lot of information that's been put forward.
Right, and that's problematic for two reasons. One is because even if you've adopted the exception to the Mullins rule, it only allows you to miss one session of the public hearing. You can't miss multiple sessions. And number two, there's also a debate amongst us lawyers as to whether not being a member of the board during one of those meetings, because you weren't elected until a later date, qualifies you to use that exemption. I've opined in the past that, it's questionable whether you can use that exemption, not because you didn't miss a meeting due to, inability to attend or illness or something along those lines. You weren't even a board member. So, again, if the applicant bears these risks, it potentially compromises any ensuing special permit that would issue, but these are things the applicant ought to think carefully about, particularly if it's going to extend the public hearing until April, if the board is inclined to grant that continuance request. That means there's plenty of time between now and April to effectively reconstitute the board. Or maybe the applicant wants to consider withdrawing or asking the board to withdraw altogether. That withdrawal can be, with the board's permission, can be without prejudice, and then make some future application sometime after the election when the board is reconstituted based upon new membership.
Okay.
So Attorney Costa, just, I know you weren't able to hear us, so they had started the particular matter in the air study. The title search is completed, but they haven't sent it to us yet. And they are looking at a different access point. The hydrologic study has not been started yet either. So I guess,
Okay, so
sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so if the particulate matter in the air study has already been started, I think it's more than fair to ask to meet in February, because that's another, 60 days, a little less than 60 days to get that report and to set up the account to do the peer review. The chapter 44, section 53G. If we continue with the hearing.
Sure. So I want to be clear. Continuances are at the discretion of the board. And that's not to say that I routinely advise the board that I represent that they have to deny continuances. They're typically allowed as a matter of course, unless they're abused. I've had some instances where an applicant is asking for a 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th continuance. And at some point, those boards tend to say enough is enough. If you're not ready, then resubmit when you are ready. We're going to refuse the continuance request. If you refuse a continuance request, you have two options. You can either allow the applicant to withdraw without prejudice, which requires a vote of the board. That effectively puts them back to where they were before they made application. They can make a new application at any time when they're ready. The other option is to, and the terminology would be to withdraw with prejudice, but a withdrawal with prejudice is effectively a denial. And while the board has the discretion to do that if you so choose, it has consequences for the applicant, because once a final action has been taken, final negative action has been taken, there is a subsequent freeze, a period within which a reapplication cannot be made. And it also subjects the town to litigation because of that freeze, the applicant may choose to file suit to appeal or challenge the denial. So I don't often recommend, except in the most extreme of circumstances, that the board do that. So your options, your recommended options are allow the continuance or effectively tell the applicant wants to withdraw without prejudice and vote to allow them to do so. If you do grant a continuance, if you go with option one, how long of a continuance you grant is entirely within the discretion of the board. It doesn't have to be until April just because that's what the applicant requests. There are pros and cons to a lengthy continuance. On the upside, a continuance until April means that the neighbors don't have to reconvene for a meeting that may not be all that substantive. It means you don't have to add this to an agenda for discussion that may not be all that substantive. But the downside are that it's a lengthy period of time between now and the next time you see the applicant and get an update on the project. So what your proposal is to reconvene in February to see where we are with these peer reviews or these review studies and to coordinate peer reviews moving forward. That's certainly something you could do. Alternatively, you could get authorization tonight or confirmation tonight that you as a board and Chris on your behalf have the authority to engage peer review consultants and coordinate that with the applicant offline. And you could do that even between now and April once you receive the report. But if you prefer to meet and discuss where you are in that sequence and what those reports are and whether they're ready for peer review, certainly you could do that in February if that was your preference.
Thank you. Yes, I just. Wait. So I just had a question. So if we do grant a continuance and the board does agree to that in April, I think that's a long time to wait for specific studies, regardless of what access point you guys are taking. So I would ask, there's some feedback there.
No, it's a delay.
Oh, is it? Okay. So I would ask that that particular matter study and the hydrologic study, although that hasn't been started yet, right? And with the winter coming, I don't know if you're going to get a
Might be
good,
started, I'm not sure.
Okay. I just don't want to come to April, have studies not be done again or not completed, and then we're still left with another continuance again. So if the particular matter study has been started, and I, ask the other board members your opinion as well, but if that's been started, I think that that needs to be completed by February so that we can set up an account and do the peer review in the meantime. So I would ask that that one, again, I don't know about the hydrologic study, but if that has been started, I would ask that that's also, because the last time we were here for the open hearing on 9/26, we were told that 60 days was more than enough time. And now we're here again, and we don't have any of the studies completed. And they were supposed to be given 2 weeks prior to this date for peer review. So, I don't know. Glenn or David? That's my feeling.
No, I said earlier, and that's why, I wanted the clarification on both sides. So with that said, I think finding a date in February to continue the meeting to, I think is helpful. So we have additional information from the applicant. And at that point in time too, it really, you're a couple months out to where, an election may be, and depending where the applicant may be, they may decide to do something different at that point, because kind of listening to what the attorney just said, if this is a different board at that point in time, it's kind of null and void. There's not enough board members to make to to vote on it, because we've already had a board member that's missed a couple meetings.
And I would agree to continue also in the hopes that you could get your studies forward and we can make some decisions from there. And allow us the time with the peer review.
So Attorney Costa, when you said to give Chris permission to speak to the applicant for the peer review, so because their attorney is not here, can we not get that in motion and set that up for the chapter 44, section 53G?
So I can't see the audience. Is the applicant or a representative of the applicant present?
A representative of the applicant.
So, then certainly that representative can stand. It doesn't need to be an event that you get through council. Comfortable with establishing these accounts. My recollection is that we had effectively discussed this process and procedure at the last session of the public hearing. Now, we're going to convene to review the status of the report before we enlisted the services of peer review consultants. But the process of actually enlisting those consultants is more administrative than it is substantive. Really, it amounts to the board identifying who those consultants would be, or if members or kind of officials identifying who those consultants would be, verifying with the applicant through council or otherwise that the applicant is okay with those selections, and then getting the funding from the applicant to be deposited into a chapter 44 section 53G account. So if the applicant's okay with us proceeding as I just described and doing so without convening another meeting of the board is okay deferring the authority to Chris to identify those consultants, maybe in conjunction with the chair, and then to get confirmation from the applicant that is okay with those selections. Then certainly that can be, you can vote upon that tonight if you choose.
So I did have in my notes from the 9/26 meeting that the select board has to adopt this regulation. So what you're suggesting is if we are going to go that way and the applicant agrees that we can adopt that tonight and get that process started?
Correct.
And I think the lawyer that was here, your lawyer, your attorney had agreed to that the last time.
Attorney Costa, do we have to actually name Chris Martin, or can we just name
The town
town
administrator.
administrator? Does it need to be a name with it, just a town? Right.
No, it doesn't need a name. It can say town administrator.
That's fine.
All right. So is the board willing to grant a continuance to February? And we will have to look at some dates, like you said, Glenn, so that we have a date. And remember, Glenn, I think there was 1 week you were on vacation, right? And then 1 week I was in February. Or is that?
That is
Yeah.
correct. That's the first 2 weeks, I think.
No, it's the week of the third and week of the 17th.
So we were doing the 10th and the 24th.
But again, I recommend it.
A different night. Yeah.
A
But
separate
if you're
meeting.
gone that first week and I'm gone
I'm
that
just,
other week.
I'm back. I'm just not here that
Okay.
Monday, so.
So for February 6th.
We can, I'm till February 6th.
You said you're free?
I'm free.
Okay. Can you do?
I'm also open
All right.
February 6th.
Unless for some reason I decide to stay in Florida and not come back.
Do you want me to check that date with the council for the property?
Yes,
Do you want another date in case that doesn't work?
we
Or
can't
no, we can't, right? It
Can't,
has to
no.
be set to that.
set it tonight, so
What day do you?
So
February
Thursday, February 6th.
Thursday?
We go later in the month, if possible.
You're gone the following week, Crystal, or another week
The
after that.
7th, the week of the 17th.
So
yeah.
we can do it the following week, the 13th.
Or the, yeah, the
That's a
13th
Thursday.
or the 27th is also a Thursday.
So,
Myself.
okay.
So what day do you need? Sorry.
27th.
Does that need a vote?
Mhm.
So just so we're clear, on Thursday, February 27th, if we continue for that date for 5:30 PM, we will have the particulate matter study done. The title search will be sent to the town administrator for us to also look at, and the hydrologic study will also be done. And then I know you guys are working on that alternate access, so as you stated before, if you have an alternate access, you'll share it with us then.
What time is the
5:30?
5:31?
Sure. Okay. We just need a motion now.
We good? I will make a motion to continue the public gravel pit meeting.
Hearing.
Hearing, I'm sorry. To February 27th, 2025 at 5:31 PM.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And then the board just also has to adopt the chapter 44, section 53G statute so that funding can be established between the applicant and the town administrator for peer review.
I will make a second motion that we accept,
Same motion.
I'm sorry,
Same
same
motion.
motion, my second motion, that we adopt chapter 44, section 53G of the Mass General Law for peer review.
Set by account for peer review, yep.
Grant permission to town administrator?
I'm sorry,
And the grant permission to the town.
and to grant permission to the town administrator
To set it
to set up the peer review
with the applicant.
with the applicant. Thank you. It's a lot of information.
It is.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion?
No discussion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so next on the agenda is the fire chief resignation.
Point of order. I mean, why aren't you gonna let people speak tonight?
So for an open hearing, it's between the select board and the applicant. So we've listened to the citizens every single hearing. So this was just a continuance between the board and the applicant.
The notice that went with the agenda on the town website said that we are continuing the public hearing. The last time.
And nowhere did it say citizen participation on the agenda.
I'm not talking about citizen participation. You don't have that public hearing.
At a public hearing, it's between the board and the applicant.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. And you can ask our attorney that
Why did we speak at all other?
because we allowed you guys to speak.
Why are we not allowing it now?
Because it's between us and the applicant. So Mr. or Attorney Costa, I am correct in saying that, right?
You are. So the way that it works, with respect to the zoning and public hearings, whether they're special permit variances, comprehensive permits, whatever they may be, is that at some point during the public hearing process, the statute refers to the term public hearing, singular. Somewhere along the way, it became common practice that public hearings often occur over multiple sessions because projects got more complicated and it was too difficult to review every project in one session. But every session is part of a single public hearing. And the way that it works with public hearings is at some point in that process, there must be an opportunity for public participation, public feedback. Hence the term public hearing versus public meeting. So a public hearing does indicate that there is an entitlement at some point in the process to public participation. Some boards allow that in every session of a multi-session public hearing. Some boards allow it at a single session of a multi-session public hearing. And what's more common is that most boards, especially for projects that are continued from session to session to session, will allow it in many of those sessions, but not necessarily all of those sessions. And it's fairly routine with a meeting like tonight, where there's really no substantive discussion of the application or the project, but really it's just a continuance request from the applicant, and we spent the last 25 or 30 minutes just talking about what's going to be accomplished at the continued public hearing and when we're going to continue to sue. It's fairly common in those circumstances for there not to be any real opportunity for public comment. But certainly I would expect that there'll be more opportunity for public comment as this process unfolds. We'll talk more about the substance of the substance of the reviews that are received, and so.
Thank you. All right, so fire chief resignation is next on the agenda. So Chris, you did give us a copy of the posting?
That was our last posting.
Okay.
So at our last meeting, we continued this to this meeting here. And I know I think the board in general had some concerns in regards to who would be leading the fire department at that time.
Yep.
And I know at that time, we'd had the deputy chief, Tyler Yvonne, stated he wasn't I wasn't interested in doing so at that point in time. And I would mention the assistant chief, Joe Fernandez, and he is here tonight. And I had reached out to him just because I want to see where we are with the fire department moving forward in regarding if the board decides to accept the Chief O'Neill's resignation and the time frame was our concern. So,
Yep.
I guess I do have if the board allows me, I do have a question for Mr. Fernandez as well.
Mr. Fernandez, please come up.
Good evening, Assistant Chief Fernandez, 22 Smith Ave. How you doing, man?
Good, how are you? I guess I have a question. What's the difference between the assistant chief and a deputy chief?
Assistant chiefs are just one level tier in the chain of
Above. So it would go chief, assistant chief, deputy chief. So at this point in time, with the assistant chief as you are, and the current chief resigns, you would become.
Technically, per the chapter, if the chief is not present, top two tier have the right to make decisions to keep the department moving forward.
Right.
At this time, after that select board meeting on Tuesday night, me and the deputy chief met with a huge part of the body, went over the situation, left us as their contacts. If there's any issues, something breaks, they need something, we can help out and get that moving. We have the right to say if the ambush breaks, I can say, send it to Marcotte. We have that right. That's our power for that chapter. So at least nothing will fall through the cracks that way. The biggest thing is I'm out of town, but my phone's on, I answer the phone. Deputy chief, he works 24-hour shifts, so he's on 24, off, on 24. So he's available, but we're not, no one in this group where setup is available 24/7.
Right.
You know, we're around, everyone will respond, you always have a good group. As you saw for the paperwork I gave you, we have 39 active members right now. Our staffing is already scheduled for December, full, no issues. We're working on January already. We took care of the capital improvement forms and stuff that need to be presented. And the next thing being, that we quickly work on will be getting the budget going until we get possibly an interim.
Okay.
After listening to your select board meeting, I contacted, Chief Motter, who's a retired chief, and also, Chief Spakenagel from Hadley. They are willing to post it on the fire chief department. With your permission, we can come up with something to post, for someone that could do the day-to-day payroll, be available for inspections. So you have that, at least a 40-hour, 30-hour week where we can do to have someone present.
Okay.
So I think that's the best thing going forward. I'm not worried about the department falling apart. I think they're a good group. They're very strong. And I just think we just need to move as fast as possible. But just fill that, because you can't put all the burden on the only 6 full-timers. Because
Right.
they have to do calls. If they're all on a call, they can't do the paperwork. Paperwork falls behind, it's too, we can't get the warrants in time. So that's the importance of having that in here.
And I think nor does the board want to. I think we want to expedite this, and this is why we kind of, I brought it back up. And I guess my concern at this point in time is before we have a interim chief, is that we have someone that is responsible for the department. And I understand that you and the deputy, but as you explained, rank structure is the chief, assistant chief, deputy chief. So I want to make sure that the 2 people don't agree on something, that someone has the authority to say, this is the way it's going to be.
The rank makes that happen,
Okay.
but
I'm
anything
not,
can happen, but I will say
Yeah.
that since this has all started, me and the deputy chief have been in constant
Yeah.
contact, we're working together. Chief O'Neill reached out, he's been very receptive for questions, had no issues getting
Okay.
responses, emails, information forwarded to us. He might not be here, but he has been not hard for us to get hold of, if there is.
Okay.
So everyone knows that.
No, and I do appreciate that. That, like I said, I don't expect there to be any issues, but sometimes you gotta live in the world of a what if. And that's why I want to make sure that what if does happen, that there's someone there that's saying, no, this is the way it's gonna be, and I'll take responsibility for it if it's not correct.
That's understandable.
Assistant Chief Fernandez, can you just tell me who were the 2 chiefs that you reached out to? Chief,
Chief Motter, who just retired, and Chief Spakenagel from Head. He's the head of the Chief Association for Western Mass, so he could send out a mass email in one shot with the posting. But I'd like to get some wording from you guys, so I'll send something to you tomorrow.
You could just send it to Chris and Chris will
Whenever we
take care
can
of it.
get that going, and he'll put it right out there, and then they'll send their request back. I did reach out, they thought there might be 1 or 2 guys that might be able to at least do 20, 30 hours,
Okay.
at least be here to help out during the day. Also, we do have 3 members that are certified on our department to do inspections.
Okay.
So that shouldn't fall behind either. They've all agreed to work together on that, and now we got that in place.
And I'm glad to hear that. And, you know, one of my concerns is that, you know, that we continue to move forward. We don't take a step back. I think the fire department over the past couple of years has been moving forward solid and continue that. I think we're just in a bump in the road right now. We have to find another chief at this point in time. But I want to make sure that, you know, the firefighters and yourself and the deputy feel supported by this board. We will, and I believe we will act quick on it because we want to make sure that, you know, we have someone in at least as an interim chief at a point in time.
Like you said, we had that meeting, everyone has our numbers, everyone was very receptive to everything, and they understand we have a job to do for the town, to keep doing our job.
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Are you accepting the resignation?
I'm okay accepting the resignation based on what
I mentioned
Assistant Chief Fernandez said. I feel,
I agree. I'm happy
Very
with that
comfortable with-
explanation.
you know, especially the meeting that they had with the department, and I feel comfortable moving forward.
And are you waiving the 60-day notification period required in the contract?
I don't think we need to, it gives us a chance to, again, is to pursue quicker than need to. Because I think if we don't accept this time, we don't find an interim chief, we don't start searching for a new chief. So I think
Another
we should just
60.
accept it now, so we can start the time frame, start moving forward and,
Right now,
you know, and move on to the next chapter for the fire department.
I agree.
I just, I don't know if it's just me, but if you have a fire chief and then you have assistant chief below, don't you pay that assistant chief to then take over for the fire chief?
Not necessarily, they can
No,
say, no, I don't want to do it.
but I thought that's why they're named assistant chief.
No, the assistant chief to assist the chief. Some people may decide they want it, some people don't. There's been many departments where someone's the assistant chief and doesn't want to be chief for whatever reasons. So,
So I will make a motion to accept the Fire Chief O'Neill's resignation and void his 60 days. Making it effective, the acceptance effective today,
Immediately.
not as of January 20.
we'll waive his 60-day notice as required and his contract.
Waive the 60 days notice as required.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion?
No discussion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Point of order. Are you making public comments tonight to the fire chief or no?
We were not accepting public comments. The next select board meeting is the 16th,
We can public comment on the fire chief issue at that point.
on the 16th.
Well, there'll be
Citizen participation.
citizen participation.
The fire chief is 12 years, so yeah, so we need something to comment on the issue going on this time.
So, and that, to your point, sir, that the board recognizes that, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's important that this board reassures that everything is okay in the fire department right now. And based on what the Assistant Chief Hernandez has told us, I think the board feels comfortable at this point in time moving forward, after they just had a meeting last night with the firefighters and the EMTs. And I think if any of them have any concerns or questions, I'm sure they'll reach out to a board member. But there will be citizen participation at the next meeting, and you're more welcome to speak about whatever you'd like to speak about at that time. It won't be on our agenda to discuss the fire department. We may have on our agenda to discuss how we're gonna move forward with the an interim chief and a new chief.
It's December 16th.
Yeah. All right, so Chris, now the posting that you have for us, we just have to review it, because this
I
was.
gave it to the board, so you could see what we put out last. So that you would have a chance to review it. And decide if you want to make any changes on it. Before we put it out for advertisement again.
I think when we put out last time, I think it's still good. The only thing I mean, obviously the salary would have gone up in the past 2 or 3 years.
I just put it out to you.
But I think we took a lot of information from I think I answered the Fire Chiefs Association, we're not sure what the association or not, but when this was being written last time, make sure that we covered everything that is needed for a fire chief at that time.
Do you know what the average is right now?
It all depends where you are and what the size of the department. But we can find that out. I gotta imagine now it's over 100,000.
And Chris, when you post that, how many weeks do you have to give them? So you post it and then, because right here it says, well, this was an old one, right?
Yeah.
Just happens to be around that time.
Yes,
Okay.
that was back in 21.
Yep.
Yes.
So 4 weeks, do you guys usually do? Depends on the position, right?
3 to 4 would probably be a good idea.
Yeah, I think it's 4 weeks. Do a solid month.
I think that's what we get for the administrator's position.
Yep.
So.
So we want to get this posted as soon as possible then. Now that we made it effective immediately. So we would need to update the salary and then change the date for when the application needs to be submitted. So would you post it tomorrow or Monday? And where are we posting?
I
it?
would wait till you
Local
make a
business.
decision on Monday.
Okay.
And then what I would do is post it the next day.
To the 16th.
17th.
Yeah.
We probably do Monster again, because it seems we've gotten a good response in Monster for the administrator's position.
Yeah.
And then I probably do Fire Chiefs Association in Massachusetts. And probably the MMA website.
And make it due January 14th. That's 4 weeks prior or after the 17th.
Whatever the date is.
Yeah. Again, I would say the same thing, that we try to move forward and have everything in place before our next election.
Mhm.
That makes it difficult, so. I know it's December, but January will be here quick and the new year will be a lot quicker as far as it gets to the spring.
So what about the hiring committee as well?
We can decide that either at the next meeting or the meeting after. For the screening.
But I think it's important that we get this out sooner than later.
Yeah.
That's why I brought you.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So next on the agenda is the wine house permits. All right, so Attorney Costa, we asked you to be here tonight for the permits for Winehouse, because we had some questions for you. Can you hear us still?
Sure.
Okay.
And I guess my only warning is, I see that you posted a discussion of White House both on your open session agenda, but also the potential for a meeting in executive session. We've met once before in executive session. Or imminently threatened litigation. So the extent that you're going to be addressing existing licensing or permitting that is unrelated to zoning violation, very well may give rise to litigation, then we should discuss those licenses. If you want to discuss or continue the discussion we started previously relative to imminent litigation, that discussion should occur in executive session.
So can I ask, based on the letter that we drafted, have you received any response from the applicant?
So I'm happy to answer that if you want me to in an open session, but that clearly falls into the second
Okay.
category that I
Alright.
just referenced, threat and litigation. So,
Okay.
we started that conversation in executive session, continue it in executive session. If you prefer to do it in open session, that's okay too. There's no pending litigation, but, there is imminently threatened litigation. So again, I defer to you. If you want me to answer the question, I'm happy to answer it in open session.
I think we should go into executive session if the other two board members.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're gonna ask, but I mean, if it needs to be in executive session, I would recommend that before it comes out here.
If you do have questions about the pending license applications, however, those are open session discussions. We can't go into executive session if we're discussing potential issuance or denial of license applications, which are not the same as zoning violations that could give rise to litigation. So if you do have licensing questions, we can discuss those now. We can go into executive session. You can announce that you're coming back out into open session, and we can discuss those later in open session. But those discussions are open session.
Let's do those first. Let's do the entertainment, the common vic, and the alcohol.
Okay.
But what we will do, we're gonna discuss, we probably should delay to our next actual meeting to take the vote on. Because you may want changes in the wording on the licenses.
Right. Let me get those out. And I know this is a lot of, I guess where I'm confused, Attorney Costa, is the issuance of these licenses on a building that was given a cease and desist. I guess I'm confused at how I'm supposed to rule on this when I'm supposed to be sort of supporting our building commissioner. So I guess that's why I thought it was a executive session based on our previous conversation.
Right. So let me try and address that without addressing matters that are more appropriate for executive session.
Okay.
There are, and this is not anything that is confined to executive session because has been a determination by your building commissioner that the property at issue is in violation of zoning. And a letter has issued to that effect. Multiple letters have issued to that extent and to the property owner and operator. Those are alleged zoning violations. There is a process and a procedure for challenging zoning determinations with which a owner or operator disagrees. And there is a process by which a municipality may pursue enforcement of zoning violations if the notification of those violations are ignored. That's a whole area of law. There are processes and procedures that are specific to zoning or alleged zoning non-compliance. When we talk about things like liquor licensing or common victualler licensing or entertainment licensing, the key word there is licensing. It's a different function, not an issue of zoning. It's an issue of a property being licensed to sell alcoholic beverages or to provide entertainment or to sell food for consumption on or off site. Those are what those licenses allow. Now, there's certainly an overlap. If your property is not properly zoned for operating a bar, then seeking a liquor license to operate a a bar, a pouring great bar. Those two things would seem to be inconsistent. And when the liquor licensing authority is asked to issue the liquor license, whether it be a new application or a renewal application, the board is entitled to consider a multitude of different things in deciding the appropriateness of issuing that license. It could consider whether the proposed license premise is an appropriate place for a bar. And one of the things it might decide or consider is the fact that it's not zoned for a bar. Not the only thing you consider. It could say, okay, it is zoned for a bar, but it's got residential homes all around because it's been zoned that way for a long time, but it still has residences in the surrounding area. It could determine that there are too many other licensed establishments, too many other pouring licenses in the immediate vicinity here. There would be a high concentration of bars. There are a number of things that a liquor licensing board can consider, but certainly zoning is one of them. So there's that overlap. Same thing with entertainment, same thing with common victuals. So when the board, as I understand it does here, and I've not been involved to date, but when the board has received applications for liquor license, victular license, an entertainment license, or renewals of those licenses for a use on a site that is not zoned for that use, that is something that the board can take into consideration in deciding how to act on those licenses. Now, I would remind you that there are separate processes and procedures that apply to each of those licenses. So the liquor licensing process is subject to a whole body of state statutes, state regulations, case law that defines how liquor licensing works. There's a different body of law that addresses common victular licenses, although it's a much smaller body of law. Same thing with entertainment. So you need to be sure that you're following the proper process and procedure if you're going to deny a license, particularly a license that has been issued before, that is going before you want a renewal. You need to be sure that you're following proper procedures, giving proper notice, an opportunity to be heard, things of that sort, before you take action to, let's say, deny the license or to condition the license. That's always an option when it comes to licensing, liquor licensing especially, that the liquor license could be conditioned. So again, I'll go to an example of a request for a liquor license to serve alcoholic beverages. Might not be a bar, it might be a different type of institution, and you might determine that based upon the location, you want to limit the hours of operation or the days of operation or the types of operations that are permitted. You could do that by way of condition. So whether that applies in a circumstance like this, that's something that you need to discuss amongst yourselves, whether a liquor license could be issued or renewed with conditions that would be consistent with the use of the property, the permitted use of the property versus a prohibited use of the property. That's a discussion you could. So yes, there's overlap, but it's not, one doesn't preclude the other. An applicant needs all permit approvals that are required to carry on a certain use. So if that use is a bar, it doesn't do any good if the zoning says a bar is allowed if they don't have a liquor license. It doesn't do any good if they have a liquor license, but they're in a location where a bar would be a prohibited. It's the applicant that requires all of the necessary permissions and relief to conduct a certain operation on a certain site.
All right, so given that information, the entertainment license, I think, needs to be conditional at the very least. Right now, it says on there Saturday through Sunday, noon to 9 p.m. So I know that we're just discussing it tonight, but the applicant has said before that they don't play anything after 6 p.m. So why isn't that changed to 6 p.m. for the first one? Chris also mentioned the last time about the tasting barn. There's no description of the building, size of the building, like we have on other ones for the liquor. Okay. So if we ask the applicant to do it on here, it has to be for everyone for that entertainment license then.
I think we should.
Yeah.
That's, again, that's the board's call. Because I believe, Mr. Trump has held fundraisers there. and he's used entertainment as a means of getting a crowd
Mhm.
in there. So are you just gonna limit the entertainment to inside the tasting barn, or are you gonna allow it to occur outside during fundraising events? You know, you don't want to restrict the business owner either, so much that the business is gonna fail.
Right.
Okay? The business owner has a right to try and make a living, make a profit. And you're trying to walk a fine line between the rights of the business owner and the rights of the surrounding neighborhood.
Which I think to go to the point of Attorney Costa is the zoning. It's residential. So there's overlap there, which makes it difficult.
And Madam Chair, I know that it was said at the outset that the board was discussing licensing, but not necessarily moving to a vote tonight. And I do think that's why, because as we further discuss in executive session, some of the particulars of the zone violation and actions that may or may not be taken, I think that some of that bears relevance to how this property allegedly can be used or may not be used. And that kind of goes hand in hand again with the extent to which you're granting these licenses, or the extent to which you're denying licenses, or the extent to which you're conditioning these licenses. There's a relationship there. And some of the information that I have to share in executive session, I think will be helpful to you.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions about the entertainment license?
I don't.
I think he has it pretty well cleared out.
Yeah.
I think too, we could ask the applicant too. I mean, what hours, if it's not 8 PM, if we're looking to do it, or is it 9 PM?
He had it on here at 9 PM, but he said at previous meetings, he stops music at 6 PM.
So I just asked that, if that's something he wants to modify or not. That piece.
And then any questions on the common Vic's license? Or any discussion on that?
I don't think anything of the kind of big license.
And that's really to sell things
So,
at the
different things.
business.
Yeah, you know,
And again, he runs fundraisers. And he uses a food truck to come in and be able to have food during the fundraising activities. It's not like, I don't believe there's one there every, I think it's just during the special event sequence.
Right.
So I don't see an issue regarding
Yeah.
allowing a food truck to come on site to be able to offer.
And they all
Food
go
to
through their
us.
necessary.
They have licenses to food trucks too, yes.
I agree.
I don't have the alcohol. I don't know why I didn't put it in here, Chris, but I don't have the alcohol one on me.
Oh, the alcohol
But-
one, on every other alcohol license, there's a complete description of the licensed premises.
Right.
On the two alcohol licenses for the wine house, it just says 16 East Street.
Yeah.
I think I'd just like to be able to have it agree with what the other ones are saying.
The point you made about, well, the 266 lounge.
Yeah,
Talked about the size of the area. Talked
how many
about
floors?
how many floors, talked about their picnic area where the alcohol will be served.
Right,
Could be
and
consumed.
to be, and that's considered the areas that they can serve.
Yeah.
Or pour.
Right.
Their product. Okay, and just saying the tasting barns doesn't really give a good enough description, I think, for the board to try and enforce a violation occurs.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
There's another zone here.
Yeah.
Jim Trophy, 290 Taylor Street, the owner of the White House.
So I don't know if Attorney Acosta is aware, but there was new legislation that just came out this year. Up until then, the state dictated where the pouring area was. And there was a question of it last year. Kathy called the assistant administrator, called the ABCC to get clarification of what I was licensed for in the area that I was allowed to serve. As of, I don't know what date it was this year, the state's been inundated because after COVID, many of the restaurants downtown were applying for these licenses every year to be able to serve on the sidewalk, so on and so forth. The state said, it's just too much. So they kicked it back to the municipalities. So there was a designated area, but I'd be more than happy to clarify that. Seeing that the town was now the forward.
And I think the additional information for the board is helpful.
And then as far as the entertainment and the hours of operation, I specifically asked to be open from 12 to 9. Entertainment typically stops at 6. And then we close the doors by 8. At 9 o'clock gives us a little bit of a bump.
Yeah. But the entertainment license would be for bands and DJs.
And karaoke.
Live entertainment or,
No, that's what, yeah, a band, yeah, live entertainment.
well, sometimes he has acoustical guitars, I think, or
Well,
things of that
it's
nature.
fine about a band, don't have to sing it.
It's not the flute and violin.
Yeah. But I just say, I think so the entertainment's in it, so I think if it's saying it's done by 6 o'clock, then I think it's fair that the license goes till 6. That doesn't talk about how long you're open till, it just talks about
Yeah.
entertainment would be done at that time.
And the other thing is to get food trucks. Back to COVID, they weren't allowing establishments to be open without food. Important to have food there, especially if there's a large, we can't keep up with what we serve there if there's a larger.
All right, I don't have any other questions for the
As long as we clarify it all and
permits.
give a little detail on it.
So because we're not making any decisions on this till December 16th, do we wait to ask the applicant to specify certain things, or do we have him specify what we've asked so far?
It would be nice if you had it in advance.
Yeah.
So it could be put on the license, so the board could endorse the license. That's it in the 60 days.
Okay.
Is that a reapplication on Mr. Tromke's part with just the detail added?
Just
to
give
it?
us the detail,
Okay.
and then what we can do is update the license.
We're asking for additional information to consider the license.
Yep.
And I know a huge issue with the surrounding neighbors was the decibels. So everyone, not just this business, but everyone should be adhering to the Mass General Law noise ordinance of 60 decibels. So is that now something that we have to put on the entertainment licenses to make sure that everyone's following those?
As long as he's following our zoning bylaws.
Which was 70 decibels. But I think
I think it's 65.
Mass General Law supersedes any of our bylaws.
I don't see where it says 60 decibels.
It was the DEP.
I didn't see it.
Okay.
Do we have an instrument that actually measures that?
I don't think we do.
We don't.
I know Chief O'Grady said one of the officers went out and bought his own, but we don't have one for the town
And is he certified to operate?
Well, that's,
and to calibrate it.
Yes. It's like the radar units.
Right.
You have to be certified and they have to recalibrate.
The DBA changes. Time of day.
Yeah, if it's nighttime, it carries louder. Is that what you mean? Or traffic or Sunday versus a Friday or something like that?
Something, they can get drops to 6
Oh, I see what you're saying, the regulations, yeah.
at 6 o'clock. It's-
Right? Do you have any questions for us?
No, I think it was, we'll be putting it there.
Okay. All right. Thank
Thank
you.
thank you.
All right, so we will now enter executive session 30A-21-A-3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. Roll call and will only come out to adjourn the original meeting. So roll call vote, Dufresne, aye.
Labonte, aye.
Sexton, I.
Thank you.